No Metal Scientist is a comedy show about a bunch of chemistry professors who for some reason have superpowers. We're going to be going over the second version, not the irrelevant first version. This show may be the best one to come out of Asia, but before we get into that, let's go over something that has to do with you Negroes. Thanks to your brave and heroic efforts on the field, this channel has finally reached 100,000 subscribers. And thank you guys for the 100k, I really appreciate it. But yeah, onto the show. It stars a dwarf military man in Germany called Eduardo Ericu, but we'll call him Watto for short, and his brother Alberto. Their dad did the dash on them when they were young, and their mom got put on the news because of the plague or something, so they tried to bring her back. But what they didn't realize is bringing somebody back from the Shadow Realm is a forbidden jutsu, so Watto lost his leg, and Alberto lost his entire body, because that's fair. So Watto gives up his arm in order to put his brother's spirit into some machine, and since then, they've been searching for the Sorcerer's Stone to bring back their bodies. Watto has a fellow military person who's really cool, and his magic is burning stuff, so we'll call him the Firebender, and the Firebender has a wife that follows him around. So the heroes are asked to find some guy, cause he's been tweaking, but in the end, leader of the country, called the Duce, was able to put him in his blunts. So then the boys go to some town where everyone is fanned out by a false prophet who's feeding them nonsense. In particular, there's this dumb hoe who believes in all his stuff because he has a ring or something, which may be the Sorcerer's Stone the heroes are looking for. Since Watto is not with the gimmicks, he exposes the false prophet and gets him out of the way. But it turns out he got his power from the androids. So then there's this minority whose country is being colonized by Germany, so he takes it upon himself to murk all the military superheroes he comes across. The heroes meet up with some scientist who they think is lit, but then they find out he turned his own daughter into a dog, like a weirdo, so they consider turning him into a pack, but the minority does it for them. The brothers then end up catching a fate with the minority, but it turns out to be an L, and some buff nigga bails them out, and then they see some scientist who tells them that he managed to make a bootleg Sorcerer's Stone. By the time they get to his lab, it's mostly been for nothing because it's been made useless, but they do get a code or something. Then the brothers decide to meet up with their old teacher for information on the Sorcerer's Stone and bring Watto's wife with them. Meanwhile, one of the Firebender's friends, an all-around real nigga, finds out that there's something sus behind Germany and all the weirdo moves they've been making, but before he can relay the information, he gets jumped by the androids. The female one, called Licentiousness, gives him the beats, then the shapeshifting one, called Jealousy, puts him on a shirt, and here's where the story really begins. Watto and Alberto finally meet with their teacher, and she finds out they did the forbidden jutsu, but she can't even tweak on them, because she did it too, so they all reminisce on their L's. After that, Alberto gets captured by an android named Avarice, but unlike the other androids, he rules alone and isn't part of the clique, so Watto and the teacher pull up and throw hands with him. Eventually the Duce catches a fate with Avarice and actually puts him on a stretcher, because it turns out the Duce is actually an android named Anger. So Anger brings him to the leader of the android, called Padre, who looks just like the Watto brothers' father, but paler. Padre offers to accept Avarice as his son again, but Avarice would rather die on his feet than live on his knees on some real nigga shit, so Padre gets him out of the way. During this time, the minority has been putting military men in shirts left and right, until he comes across a Chinese girl who's looking for the Sorcerer's Stone. The Watto brothers also come across a Chinese person, but he's an older boy who's also looking for the stone, because he wants to use the magic to take his father's place as the next emperor of China. Back in the capital, it turns out an innocent has been blamed for the murking of the Firebender's friend, and the brothers feel some type of way about it, but it's okay, because it turns out the Firebender just faked her death, and she's actually just chilling somewhere. Sometime after that, the Firebender's wife gets into a heated debate with a fat android called Obesity, and he almost gets her out of the way, but she gets bailed out by some guy. Then the Firebender steps in and throws hands with Licentiousness and puts her in the dirt. So Watto goes back to his hometown and sees his father, and then gets in his feelings over it. But the father says that the corpse they did the forbidden jutsu on might not have been their mother, so then he checks with the teacher to see if she did the jutsu on her fetus, and she didn't either, so it looks like something's going on. Sometime later, the Watto brothers decide to bait the androids by catching a fate with minority in public. Also, the Firebender tries to find the bootleg Sorcerer's Stone maker, but it turns out he's MIA, so the minority pulls up and throws hands with them. Meanwhile, the Chinese prince and his bitch fight with Obesity and the Duce. While the brothers are fighting the minority, he admits to putting the Watto's wife's prince in his blunt, so she pulls out a strap on him, but then they de-escalate the situation. So the androids chase after the Asians, but eventually manage to get them off their asses. So the prince tells the brothers and the Firebender that the Duce is an android. Sometime after this, the androids get a hold of the scientist who tries to make a bootleg Sorcerer's Stone and are getting stuff from him so they don't put his village on the news. Then Obesity pulls up because he's still hurt over the fact that his bitch sister got put in a tombstone by the real nigga Firebender, until Jealousy joins him and they have a jihad with the brothers until eventually Obesity swallows Watto and the prince. And in there, they throw hands with Jealousy, who tells them that he's the one who started the war between Germany and the minority country. Also, Alberto tells Obesity to take him to Padre, so he does. And then Obesity spits out Watto, the prince, and Jealousy. Unlike the other androids, Padre can use science, and in fact, he controls all the science in Germany. So he puts a sorcerer's stone in the prince and turns him into the new Avarice. Then jealousy leads the brother to the Duce, who confirms that he is indeed an op android, and Wado tries to fuck off from the military, but the androids need him, so the Duce tells him that if he does, then his wife is gonna end up on some clothing. Jealousy hires a war criminal psycho that almost murked the minority in the Civil War, to once again try to murk the minority, while the buff nigga tells the Wado brothers about his sister in the north, and that they should go link up with her. Then the brothers meet up with Duce's son, who seems like a regular fetus to them, so they meet up with the buff guy's sister, and then they catch a fit with some giant android named Laziness, who they give the beats to. But then the sister presses the brothers for more information on the Sorcerer's Stone, and if it can be used to create immortal soldiers or something. Also, the Firebender's wife finds out that the Duce's son is an android, and not just any android, but the first one created by Padre, and his name is Arrogance, so he's the Duce's older brother. Sometime later, she tells the Firebender about this, so he's up to speed. Also, Padre is daydreaming about his first scheme of genocide. Back in the BC times, he was creating the labs of Egypt or Mesopotamia or something by the king who wanted to live forever. He taught some slave science and gave him a name, and then tricked the king into doing a forbidden jutsu, which made him and the slave immortal. The slave went on to become the Water Brothers' father, while the android made Germany into a modern country. So Avarice is murking some niggas, and they happen to be his former slaves, so he feels conflicted, then remembers his former life, and tries to catch a fate with the Duce. Alberto gets caught by obesity and arrogance, while the female general and the heroes decide to take control back from the Duce, after it looks like he got murked in some train explosion, but before she can go further, she has to deal with Padre and Laziness. So Wado's father tells Wado and the others of Padre's plans to commit genocide again, while everyone tries to throw hands with Arrogance, but he controls the shadows, so he's just too strong. Then he gets even stronger after he's that lame-ass nigga obesity. But then Alberto makes a play, and it worked, and it's like a full-scale jihad. After this, a bunch of fake androids are released into the city, and this is actually like the first episode I watched when I first got into the series. So yeah, I could barely follow what niggas was talking about, but it was still lit, so it was whatever. So the psychopath manages to free Arrogance, but then the guy who made the bootleg Sorcerer's Stone heals an animal man, who almost puts the psycho onto papers, so Arrogance eats him and gets his energy. Also, the Firebender pulls up on Jealousy, who starts talking tough about the fact that he got his best friend out of the way, so he chases him into a hole and burns him back to his original size. Before he can finish the job, Wado and the others pull up and tell him not to be a Suzuki, because he was a lame character. And unlike Suzuki, he actually listens to his niggas, so he repents. But Jealousy looks like a hoe now, so he murks himself. Then the buff military guy and his sister get help from Wado's teacher and her husband, and manage to put Laziness in their blunts. So Wado's father pulls up on Padre, and they have a disagreement. Back above ground, the rebels are feeling themselves, because they think the ops have been defeated, but then the Duce pulls up, and in what may be the most lit scene on the show, starts putting niggas on shirts left and right. Meanwhile, Padre turned into a blob, those like Arrogance and shadows. So some old man gets murked trying to step into the Duce, but the Duce is wounded too, so he goes to deal with his L somewhere else. Wado, Alberto, and the teacher all get captured, while some scientist tries to get the Firebender to perform a forbidden jutsu in order to save his wife's life. When he refuses, Arrogance enters in a cheat code and makes him do it anyway. Then he gets thrown in the basement with the others and loses his sight because of the jutsu, even though the nigga was trying to avoid this. Also, the minority catches a fit with the Duce and puts him in his blunts. So Wado, Alberto, the teacher, and the Firebender all have to throw hands with Padre and Arrogance until Padre gets tired and has them all do the jutsu, which once again puts everyone in a shirt and makes Padre an Olympian. Also, he looks like a young man now too. But thankfully, Wado's real nigga-ass father went around the country doing a reverse spell that put all the people's souls back in their bodies. But Padre is still powerful and just does the dash on his son. Then Wado gets the son out of the way and turns him into an embryo. So Padre goes above ground and starts tweaking and doing the most, even recreating the ancient Middle Easterners who he did dirty in the BC times. Eventually, he has things looking great for Wado, so Alberto sacrifices his life to give Wado his arm back, which he then uses to give the beast to Padre. After this, Padre makes one final attempt to take a W, and tries to get Avarice's sorcerers, but all it does is make his body weak, so Padre turns Avarice into a memory in another comedic scene. After that, Wado manages to make Padre collapse in on himself, where he meets Fact, who tells him that he's been tweaking all this time and needs to go back where he belongs. It looks like the day is saved, but Alberto is still MIA, so Wado makes one final jutsu, where he decides to trade all for his brother's body and soul. Fact is finally happy that somebody's able to think beyond just having powers, and lets Wado take Alberto home. Then with his work done, the Water Brothers' father goes on to the next dimension, in front of his wife's tombstone. So the battle is over, and all the niggas get what they needed. The Firebender ends up becoming the new Duce, and his wife is his right hand. The female general goes to help the minority fix things in his country, and Wado starts to actually grow, and ends up marrying his wife, and lives a normal life with his brother in their native block. Overall, the show is very hard, and might be the best to ever come out of his country, but I don't know. It's facing some really stiff competition from this other show I might go over in the future. But for sure, those two are the top of their type, and deserve all the compliments they get from the niggas who watch them. Keep recommending shows though, cause I'm trying to make stuff you niggas wanna watch, and not just on rando ones. And remember that forbidden nonsense is forbidden for a reason, so don't try it.
Okay guys, make sure that when you subscribe you hit the notification button, because that lets you know whenever I make a new video, and as always, thanks for watching.